Well, hey guys, Josh Sparks here with Midwest Whitetail, and today what I'm going to be talking about is bow hunting out of blinds, some of the tips that I look for. And the first place to start is going to be your options when trying to select what kind of blind to go hunt with. The most popular is probably going to be some sort of hub style blind. You know, it's the most portable, they're lightweight, you can throw them into a bag, take them to any different farm, super quick setup. And the different options that you have to go through even further are what size do you want? How many people do you need in there? What kind of window style do you want? You know, my preference is always going to be one that has some sort of slide down. Gives me more of an option when I'm bow hunting. You know, if you get into those V-style blinds, you get kind of limited when you're trying to shoot your bow out of them. The next option that I would talk about, and this is one that's pretty recently something that I have been utilizing so far in this 2023 deer season, is a hay bale style blind. You know, it's still a ground blind. It's a little bit heavier, a little bit bulkier. It's obviously not as mobile, but for the situation that I'm going to dive into, you know, the cover, this is just what fits better. So taking a step back, step number two, when I'm trying to select what kind of blind to go with, is what is my farm's cover? What is the property's layout? If I have a pop-up blind, I'm going to need some sort of cover. I'm going to need something that I can tuck it into, brush it in. Maybe that's a deadfall. Maybe that's, you know, something that you're manually adding to it by cutting branches, but I'm definitely not going to just go pop it up, leave it, hunt it, and expect that those deer are going to accept it day number one. On the flip side, the hay bale blind, and in my situation, we're hunting a farm that's all CRP, very little tree options, and frankly, not a good place for us to just pop up a blind and call it good. So the hay bale blind's been a great option because I think that the deer take to it a lot better, but like I mentioned, not as mobile. So following that, I've made my selection on the kind of blind. Now how am I going to place it? You know, something to take into consideration is if I'm hunting in the mornings in this spot, I don't want my blind facing the east. I want it to be facing the west because I don't want that sunrise to come up, light me up inside of that blind, take away my ability to get away with movement. And on the inverse, if it's in the afternoon, my blind's going to be facing directly east. West is going to be at my back. That way as the sun goes down, the shadows get long, will darken up inside of that blind, and any sort of movement that I need to get away with is going to be, you know, applicable. So the next thing that I would take into consideration is if this is your first time shooting out of a blind, definitely do not make it the first time that you're out hunting that you take a shot. Pop up your blind in your yard, you know, take shots out of it. You know, for example, like I mentioned, pop-up blinds have V windows, they've got slide down windows. And so just getting very familiar with how you need to be drawn in that blind. Is there enough room to get back at full draw? Is your arrow going to go out the front? You know, also just making sure your rest clears the bottom of those windows. You know, far too often you hear the stories about, man, I had him right there, arrow went through the blind just because they didn't settle in at that anchor point high enough. And as simple as it might sound, on a different note, something to not look over is what chair you're taking to that blind. And make sure you got one that's adjustable. Make sure it's one that you, especially with archery, can get above that window, get comfortable, be level. Because a lot of times when you're placing a blind, it's not always flat ground. So chair is important, blind placement's important, consider what time of day you're hunting it. And then finally, you know, as with any sort of hunt, consider your access. You know, it's always important to be able to get in, but most importantly, can you get out of that blind? And so one thing that we've taken into consideration is just trying to make sure that where the door is, whether that's a zipper or in our case, the hay bale blind, we're going to be able to, where we expect the deer to be, we'll be able to get out on the backside, exit with that blind in our field of view of those deer, and hopefully that allows us to sneak out and hunt it multiple times. So hopefully those are some beneficial tips if you're considering to bow hunt out of a blind this season. There's a lot of different options out there, a lot of great brands. Check them all out at MidwayUSA, and best of luck the next time you guys hit the woods.